one thing that jumps out at me is that, as Kevin said, this is a very broad question that impacts many communities, and the Bring the Guard Home campaign is no exception to that. There may actually be more diversity of opinion on this panel than you might think, and I think we'll get into some of that as we move forward. But in terms of the Guard Home campaign, there are many people who are concerned about these fundamental questions regarding war powers and executive power in particular. So that in the state of Oregon, there are 9 Republicans who stepped forward to support the Guard Home legislation. In the state of Wisconsin, the Libertarian Party is working with the Democratic Party and the Green Party to pass this legislation. And this is becoming a very broad and also sometimes difficult coalition that we're building over the months to reform defense policy in the United States. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to let you know that some of these discussions and broad conversations are happening. Our cleanup banner tonight is a gentleman that I know that many people are excited to see, and he doesn't want any more introduction, I can tell. So please welcome Jeremy Scahill.
So I was asked tonight to speak about the Olympic bid for the
Chicago.
Yes, it's going to a Latin American nation now of Brazil, and let's hope that it doesn't wreak havoc on the poor and working people of Brazil, which oftentimes when the Olympics come to town, the poor people are the ones that pay for it. The dissidents also are rounded up in some countries, as we saw, including in China, where Bush spent 4 days hanging out there while the war was deteriorating worse and worse. And now Obama was chastised for going over for a day to Denmark. And the reason that I bring this up is because we are living in bizarro world, in the sense that we have a rise in the prominence and popularity of outright lunatics in this country that are being led by hucksters and snake oil salesmen, people like Glenn Beck and others. And I think that I wish that Jimmy Carter was the president in the way that he's the man now. I wish that the Jimmy Carter of today was the president then, because he has, in this sense, he has called the question on U.S. support for Israel in a way that no president sitting or past would have done. And he was boxed out of a speaking role at the Democratic National Convention because of his very outspoken criticism of the sort of sacred cow of U.S. foreign policy. And then more recently, he called out the racism that we see now against Barack Obama, precisely because you have these fanatical racists that cannot tolerate the fact that a black man is the president of the United States. You watch the joint session of Congress address that Obama did on health care, and you see the look on the faces of those Republican senators and congressmen, and you can tell exactly what they're thinking as they sit in those chairs staring at Barack Obama. And the irony of this is that seldom, I think, has empire had a greater ally in terms of advancing itself than Barack Obama. In fact, he probably is going to be a much more successful emperor, to keep playing with the term that Kevin so rightly put out, than John McCain ever would have been. Barack Obama is going to clean up the image of the United States so that corporate interests are extended and served. Look at his team of economic advisors. Look at his team of foreign policy advisors. We have a kettle of hawks running the foreign policy. Did you know that kettle is the plural for a group of hawks? They call them a kettle. Anyway, I learned that. And then he also has a gang of neoliberal crooks running U.S. economic policy. These are people that early on, when they were appointed, won widespread praise, not from liberals, not from progressives, not from radical anti-war folks, but from neoconservatives, people like Bill Kristol, and they used words like gobsmacked. We're gobsmacked with these appointments. They were ecstatic about the team that Barack Obama was able to pull together. Empire is not going to see a better friend in terms of actual corporate interests being advanced around the world than Barack Obama. So all of this is to say that these people who are out there with their racist signs and their pictures of the president as a witch doctor and the Joker face over him and all of the horribly misspelled attempts to be clever when they say he's a Muslim. I mean, I don't know what you think of the material Muslim, but apparently these people are very much against Muslim. They called him a half-breed Muslim. It was one sign. So we have the situation where the discourse is now millions of people that watch Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly, who largely are actual certifiable crazy people. And then you have sort of the rest of the country that is engaging in debate and discussion, hopefully, on a lot of issues of national importance. We could have two discussions here tonight. One would be about the sort of long-term battle on how you actually change the fundamentals of the system in this country so that some of what Elaine and others have talked about tonight could be advanced in terms of a proactive strategy. I don't think we have the time tonight to get into that kind of a discussion because some of the issues in front of us are so pressing that I think it's more important to talk strategically about how to address those issues that we actually can impact at this point. I want to co-sign much of what Kevin said on the issue of using the term defense reform. I do think that it's genius. When it was the Pentagon, was originally referred to as the War Department, and then they changed it to the Defense Department. In fact, I remember being with Dan Berrigan at the Pentagon once during a protest, and he said that when this place was built, the Pentagon, they said that after the war they were going to turn it into a hospital, and he said you've got to give them credit because they kept their word. It's the biggest insane asylum in the world. And I think it's important as we look at the scandal, the utter scandal of lack of health care for people in this nation, compare the crisis and the casualties or the deaths from lack of health care to those inflicted on the United States of America by Al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden or the resistance in Afghanistan or the resistance in Iraq. The premier national security issue of our time is healthcare in this country. And yet, you see billions upon billions of dollars being spent to occupy nations abroad that pose no actual threat to the United States, and then spineless Democrats refusing to stand up for not just a public option, but for single-payer health care in this country. All of the casualties and deaths, I'm using the term casualties because it's their term, that are caused by the war on the uninsured, or the half-insured, or the partially insured in this country, can be directly linked back to decisions made by those ostensibly elected by the people to represent them, and they have utterly failed to do that. If there was ever a moment in the history of this country where the Democratic